This morning was unpleasant to say the least. We had a few light flurries in the early morning, but it started to progress to a point where I thought it would be nice if I got the new horse a blanket. I have a pretty extensive blanket collection, but none that fit this guy.
Is he cold?
I promised you guys I would reveal this new horse's name today, and I actually say it to him in one point in the video, so keep your ears open. After measuring this guy, I found out he needs a size 64, 66 blanket. I do not have that size, so I'm gonna have to go out and see if I can find one somewhere in town. I was hoping that this snowstorm would just move along, but it looks like they've closed down some of the highway in places, and some of my friends up on the mountain have like 2 feet of snow already. I really don't want the new guy shaking off all of the good top line that he's been building over the last week, so it's best if I can go grab him a blanket from somewhere. This snowstorm isn't really getting Huckleberry down. He found the perfect stick and has been carrying it around all morning. He is probably also going to be super excited for a trip into town. I know that a lot of the feed stores have switched over to summer horse clothes, so I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to find what I'm looking for today. There is a used tack store a little farther out of town, so I might have to pop in there if I can't find it at the regular feed store. By the time I get into town, we've started to accumulate quite a bit of snow on the ground.
Hey, buddy. Snowing out.
It's kind of odd because my truck is saying that it's 37 degrees out. The snow is quite slushy down here. We must be right on the line of elevation to where the snow is really sticking. Just as I had expected, they do not have any blankets left, only sheets and fly sheets. I think this one might be a little bit too big, but it is waterproof and it is a very heavy duty one. That is looking like the only option I have at this store. I was hoping to find some blankets on clearance. I found these cute little calf blankets. I don't need one of those yet. I decided to go ahead and get this waterproof heavy duty sheet. That should do the trick for him. While I was checking out that information, I noticed they had these fly sheets on sale for only $12. So naturally, I had to pick up 3 of those just for good measure. When I got back home, there was still more snow accumulating on the ground. This is probably the worst kind of weather for me to get my ankle healed because it's so slippery. I am just going to be extra careful not to slip in the snow or mud that's on the ground now. I have been taping my ankle just in case I have any whoopsie daisies, and it is starting to feel a lot better. I was happy to see this guy in his little run-in shed enjoying his breakfast still. When the weather gets a little bit bad like this, the neighbor horse goes back to her house and she's got a little barn that she can stand in.
Come here, bud. Come on.
She does have a lot more weight and muscle mass on her, so she is not even cold at all in this weather. This guy does not have hardly any fat on his body, so when he shakes to keep warm, it is literally just melting all of that new muscle off of him. He was a little bit hesitant for me to catch him this morning, but it didn't take me too long to get the halter on him and then bring him back over to his little shelter. He is covered in some mud and he's been standing out in the snow and rain for a little while, so he is pretty wet. I'm gonna clean him off and try and get him as dry as possible. Even though the sheet doesn't have any insulation, it can get quite warm underneath them, so I don't want him growing any fungus on his skin. He was being pretty good about me giving him a good scrub down. He was a little bit nervous about me getting his back end. I have a feeling that this guy has had some natural horsemanship done on him, so he's a little bit squiggly and likes to move his hip around a lot. He eventually figured out that I was just trying to get him dried off. I would not be surprised if this guy has never worn a blanket before, so I'm just going to ease it onto him. I unhooked the chest and I'm just going to put it on like I would a regular saddle blanket. He was a little bit unsure of it at first, but he did his best to stand still while I got it adjusted for him. He is a little bit thinner than my regular horses, so I was anticipating him needing a smaller size than he actually measured to. This blanket is a size 66 and it looks like it's maybe an inch or two too big for him. I got it adjusted on the smallest holes on the front. He finally figured out that this was probably going to be a good addition to his wardrobe. A big snowball fell on the roof and it gave him a little bit of a scare. This blanket is supposed to actually be waterproof. Typically when I buy a new blanket, I'll spray some extra waterproofing on it just to make sure. But I definitely did not have time for that today, so we're gonna see how well this was advertised. I was having a little bit of trouble getting the belly straps adjusted for him since he is a little bit thin. I had to take them up almost to their smallest setting. This is where he really started settling into the whole blanketing process. Sometimes I don't put these back leg straps on a horse that's never worn a blanket, but I think this guy can handle it. If I'm unsure if a horse has worn a blanket before, I always lead them around so they can feel it on them. He was a little bit scared, but he got over it pretty quick. I unfortunately have seen several occasions where people put blankets on horses that have never worn them and they run around frantic. It is pretty easy for a horse to injure themselves accidentally if they're scared of a blanket and they run into a fence or another horse. But it looks like this guy is back to business as usual. The neighbor's horse is still really trying to woo this guy. For a really old horse, I'm kind of surprised she is even coming into heat anymore. It will probably be good for her to do a few laps every day following this guy around because she was getting a little bit out of shape. I am getting a little bit more worried that I'm not going to be able to provide this guy with the exercise that he needs every single day. He is on the smaller side to be a pony horse, but it would be awesome if he could go out on the trail and pony a bunch of my younger horses. That would definitely be a win-win situation. He could get out and get a bunch of exercise and the other horses could get ponied around. Since he is an Arabian, I did look into any endurance rides that were happening this summer in Montana. There is one coming up in a month, and I think that might be a tight squeeze to get him legged up properly. Given his energy level right now, I think that he may have been used earlier this spring for rides on the guest ranch, so he may be in a little bit better shape than I had anticipated. All of his vitals checked out really good at the vet, so maybe here when it stops snowing, I'll start riding him. It definitely looks like he is going to need some more mental stimulation to keep him quiet in his pen throughout the summer. I feel confident he has enough protection from the weather, and I will check back on him at dinner time. It's been a few hours and the weather is a little bit nicer. A bunch of the snow has melted. It's still raining a little bit. I've got this guy a big bucket of mash for dinner and some more hay.
Why?
It looks like he is 100% dry under his blanket and it's doing a really good job of keeping the moisture off.
It's okay. Sorry.
Some blankets that say they're waterproof, you have them on your horse for a day and they are completely soaked through, but this one seems to be doing a really good job. He is happily scarfing down his mash. This is probably a good time to let you guys know what I decided to call this guy.
Ziggy.
Due to his kind of fun-loving personality, I am deciding to call this dude Ziggy. It is actually the name that he came with and it suits him very well. I do also think that he knows his name already because he does respond to it. I tried out a few other name suggestions that were really good and they just did not fit him.
Huckleberry? What are you doing?
Huckleberry found his stick from
A
this
stick?
morning. You can really see here with the mud how much Ziggy has been trotting and walking along the fence today. The other horses didn't seem to mind the snow too much, but Tiny was really upset about all the snow. Pretty much the whole day she stayed snuggled down in the horse blankets. It is a little bit nuts. In about 48 hours it will be 70 degrees, so she's just gonna have to hang in there. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.